Oh, that's such a weird pose.
Also, I just realized, and I need to point this out, that like as the only or one of two non-binary people here, I am the one without my pronouns in my Zoom. And that is hilarious. Like in part because I logged in and was accidentally Frankie, but you know.
Yeah, I almost called Lyric Frankie at the start of the call. I got a bit confused.
Is that because you had your video off Lyric? So you have the picture of Frankie.
Yeah, the Frankie face.
Dina, what are your earrings? They look beautiful.
They're clouds with little faces on them.
Oh,
that...
I love them even more.
Is that after Winnie the Pooh last night? On brand?
Oh, not on purpose. Yeah,
okay.
Subconsciously.
Yeah. Hi, Dora.
Oh,
It's
back on time.
Yes, I know. I'm super proud of myself. I set myself an alarm so that I wouldn't forget because I would. I really look forward to the second part of Winnie the Pooh.
Oh man, yeah.
I actually could use like an intro because I wasn't able to catch up earlier. So if you give me a roundup of the magnificent tales and heroic deeds of Winnie the Pooh.
What we had yesterday, can we do this as a group effort? I'm not sure I'm as good at summary as Frankie.
We'll do it like Jack and Nori. Somebody start and then we'll clap and then someone else has to take over.
Okay. So at the very, very beginning, we meet Winnie the Pooh, who is called Winnie, but is a boy because he's Winnie the Pooh. And that's what "the" means. And that's the amount of explanation we get for that.
Okay.
So we're hearing stories being told to Christopher Robin about Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah. Because of course Christopher Robin remembers them, but he likes to be reminded.
Yeah. And Winnie the Pooh needs to be told the stories, but Christopher Robin doesn't. He just wants to make sure Winnie the Pooh is going to hear the stories.
Oh.
So in the first one, Winnie the Pooh hears a buzzing sound, and the only reason for making a buzzing sound that he can think of is because you're a bee. And the only reason for being a bee is making honey, and the only reason for making honey is so Pooh can eat it. So he goes on an adventure to try and steal some honey.
And then he asks for a balloon, and he gets a balloon, and so then I think he ties it around his wrists and flies up the tree so that he can be in the tree where the bees are, where they make honey. But before all of that, he thinks, oh, but if I go up there, how can I make sure that they won't think that I'm just there to steal their honey? And then it's something about like he wants to pretend that he's a cloud, so he rolls himself in dirt so that he looks like a dark cloud, and asks Christopher Robin to walk underneath the tree up and down with an umbrella to say, "Tut tut, it looks like rain." So that the bees will think that it is raining, so that he's a cloud, so that he's not just there to steal their honey.
And then he realizes it's going wrong because the bees are quite suspicious. So he decides they were the wrong sort of bees and they probably make the wrong sort of honey, and he would like to come down now. And he does not have a plan for coming down. So he gets Christopher Robin to shoot his balloon with his gun, which he does the second time, and he comes down to the ground and his arms are stuck up in the air for a week. And that's the first story.
Hooray!
Good summary, good group summary. And in the second story, Pooh goes to visit his friend Rabbit, who lives in a hole in the ground. And he is there around 11s, which he's very excited about because that means you get a little something to eat. And he has honey and condensed milk. And he eats all of Rabbit's honey and condensed milk. And then he gets stuck in in Rabbit's hole when he's leaving. So his front is stuck out of the hole and his back is stuck in the hole. And so he has to stay there for a whole week. And at the front end of Pooh, Christopher Robin and Rabbit read him stories. And at the back end of Pooh, his legs get used as a towel rack. Because it's just, they're just there. Hi, Duncan. We're doing a summary of what happened yesterday. And he eventually gets thin enough to be pulled out and escape. And then, what was the third one?
The Woozles.
The Woozles. Yeah.
The Woozles. Hi, Bracken. We're recapping.
Oh, fuck. What did I miss?
We're recapping. We've got to the Woozles. So Pooh is in the snow and has found some tracks, and he thinks it might be a Woozle. And then Piglet comes along and joins him because he's got nothing to do until Tuesday. And so they're walking around a spinney of trees, and they're just having a chat about nothing in particular. And then they see another set of tracks. So it's like, maybe now there's two Woozles, and they're a bit more cautious in case they're hostile animals. And then there's a third set of tracks, which are different from the first two. So maybe it's two Woozles and one Whizzle, or two Whizzles and one Woozle. They're not quite sure. And then they get to a fourth set of tracks, which is maybe another Woozle. And Piglet gets very scared and remembers something that he must do immediately now and couldn't possibly do it any other time.
Because it's happened between the hours of 12 and 12:05.
Yeah.
Very important
Establishing
detail.
that it's 12 now. And then Christopher Robin has been watching them from up a tree. And he comes down and asks Pooh what he's been doing. Because he walked around the trees once by himself, and then with Piglet. And then Pooh realizes that he's been tracking his own tracks. But it's okay because Christopher Robin loves him very much, even if he is a silly old man. And that's where we got up to yesterday.
Fear of no brain at all.
He has been foolish and deluded. I was here for poetry and have been doing knitting and don't even have the book, so I will be back in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, Harry's starting again now, so I'll see you all later. Have a lovely night.
Bye, Mike. Love you.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
Harry
Have fun.
Baker.
Bye. Thanks for
So how was poetry stuff?
Really good. I have the link paused. If you want, we can pop it back in the chat again, because if you pause it, it'll let you keep watching later, but it won't let you start from the beginning because it's live streaming. So if you want to open it and pause it to watch later, I'll probably watch more after this too, if folks want to listen to more. But yeah, it was very good. I'm really enjoying his new work. It's a lot more vulnerable. Also, still delivering on the pun. Yeah. Tabby, Andy, what did you think of poetry?
I found it rather joyful. I was rather lucky coming in for the laugh poem, and then I even got one who was bits and pieces of German in it, and his appreciation and perspective on my language. And that was pretty cute.
Will you tell them about the tortoise and the snail and the slug?
Right, so he found out that we've got weird words, like every language does. And because that poem was called Falafellöffel, which is like falafel spoon, like a specific spoon. And we do have words for, which words did you want to know again?
I think it was tortoise.
All right, it's shit.
Schildkröte.
Right. So it's shield, what is Kröte?
Water shield frog.
Yeah, like toad, shield toad.
Yeah, water shield toad. That's what we call a tortoise.
Yeah, Wasserschildkröte, right. And then then he was really excited what a slug might be, but it's
I think it was
nothing.
a snail
Like,
first.
yeah, what a snail might be. And
Yeah,
I
because
think he
snails look like they have a
imagined
shield
something
too.
grouse or something, but we just call it Schnecke, which is a nice word, but rather unspectacular. But then you find out that we've got a thing called Nacktschnecke. So we've got a naked snail, which is a slug. And then he had lots of fun with the idea of having a naked snail running around and whatnot in the house.
I love that. Necke is so much fun to say. Like maybe I should just learn German because the words are really fun. Necke.
That is a good word.
Hey Bina. I think it might be story.
Story. Are we allowed story time when Katie's not here to whisper story time?
I think Katie might have run away to go watch Harry Baker. She hasn't come back since we gave her the Harry Baker.
That's true. Okay.
And for anyone who might want to watch it later, again, it's in the chat. Just press pause now because it's playing live, so you can just press play on it later. But I don't know if it'll let you play it from the start again later. I don't know how long he's keeping it up.
Okay. But if you are staying here, or even if you're not, are you sitting comfortably? I have put us on speaker view, but I just have lyric, not my own face. So I'm not sure what I'm recording at the moment. So we'll do an experiment and see. Oh, there's my
I
own.
made you spotlit, so it should be fine for sure.
Okay. Kids. When I uploaded the yesterday's video, it was just gallery view the whole time, which is fine because your faces are excellent. Okay, so today we begin with chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds one. The old grey donkey, Eeyore, stood by himself in a thistly corner of the forest, his front feet well apart, his head on one side, and thought about things. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, why? And sometimes he thought, wherefore? And sometimes he thought, inasmuch as which? And sometimes he didn't know which he was thinking about. So when Winnie the Pooh came stumping along, Eeyore was very glad to stop thinking for a little, in order to say, how do you do, in a gloomy manner to him. And how are you? Said Winnie the Pooh. Eeyore shook his head from side to side. Not very how, he said. I don't seem to have felt at all how for a long time. Dear, dear, said Pooh. I'm sorry about that. Let's have a look at you. So Eeyore stood there, gazing sadly at the ground, and Winnie the Pooh walked all round him once. Why, what's happened to your tail? He said in surprise. What has happened to it? Said Eeyore. It isn't there. Are you sure? Well, either a tail is there or it isn't there. You can't make a mistake about it, and yours isn't there. Then what is? Nothing. Let's have a look, said Eeyore. And he turned slowly round to the place where his tail had been a little while ago. And then, finding that he couldn't catch it up, he turned around the other way until he came back to where he was at first. And then he put his head down and looked between his front legs. And at last, he said, with a long, sad sigh, I believe you're right. Of course I'm right, said Pooh. That accounts for a good deal, said Eeyore gloomily. It explains everything. No wonder. You must have left it somewhere, said Winnie the Pooh. Somebody must have taken it, said Eeyore. How like them, he added, after a long silence. Pooh felt that he ought to say something helpful about it, but didn't quite know what, so he decided to do something instead. Eeyore, he said solemnly, I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you. Thank you, Pooh, answered Eeyore. You're a real friend, said he. Not like some, he said. So Winnie the Pooh went off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a fine spring morning in the forest as he started out. Little soft clouds played happily in a blue sky, skipping from time to time in front of the sun, as if they had come to put it out, and then sliding away suddenly so that the next might have his turn. Through them and between them, the sun shone bravely, and a copse which had worn its furs all the year round seemed old and dowdy now, beside the new green lace which the beeches had put on so prettily. Through copse and spinney marched Bear, down open slopes of gorse and heather, over rocky beds of streams, up steep banks of sandstone into the heather again, and so at last, tired and hungry, to the 100-acre wood. For it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived. And if anyone knows anything about anything, said Bear to himself, it's Owl who knows something about something, he said. Or my name's not Winnie the Pooh, he said. Which it is, he added. So there you are. Owl lived at the Chestnuts, an old world residence of great charm, which was grander than anybody else's, or so it seemed to Bear, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Underneath the knocker, there was a notice, which said, Please ring if an answer is required. Underneath the bell pull, there was a notice, which said, Please knock if an answer is not required. These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. For Owl, wise though he was in many ways, able to read and write and spell his own name, Wall, yet somehow went all to pieces over delicate words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie the Pooh read the two notices very carefully, first from left to right, and afterwards, in case he had missed some of it, from right to left. Then, to make quite sure, he knocked and pulled the knocker, and he pulled and knocked the bell rope, and he called out in a very loud voice, Owl, I require an answer. It's Bear speaking. And the door opened and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How's things?" "Terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail and he's moping about it. So could you very kindly tell me how to find it for him?" "Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is as follows." "What does crustamony proceed cake mean?" said Pooh. "For I am a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me." "It means the thing to do." "As long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is as follows. First, issue a reward, then—" "Just a moment," said Pooh, holding up his paw. "What do we do to this, what you were saying? You sneezed just as you were going to tell me." "I didn't sneeze." "Yes, you did, Owl." "Excuse me, Pooh, I didn't. You can't sneeze without knowing it." "Well, you can't know it without something having sneezed." "What I said was, first, issue a reward." "You're doing it again," said Pooh sadly. "A reward," said Owl very loudly. "We write a notice to say that we will give a large something to anyone who finds Eeyore's tail." I see, said Pooh, nodding his head. "Talking about large somethings," he went on dreamily, "I generally have a small something about now, about this time in the morning." And he looked wistfully at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's parlour. "Just a mouthful of condensed milk or whatnot, with perhaps a lick of honey." "Well then," said Owl, "we write out this notice and we put it up all over the forest." "A lick of honey," murmured Bear to himself, or not, as the case may be." And he gave a deep sigh and tried very hard to listen to what Owl was saying. But Owl went on and on, using longer and longer words, until at last he came back to where he started, and he explained that the person to write out the notice was Christopher Robin. "It was he who wrote the ones on my front door for me. Did you see them, Pooh?" For some time now, Pooh had been saying yes and no in turn with his eyes shut to all that Owl was saying. And having said yes, last time, he said no, not at all now, without really knowing what Owl was talking about. "Didn't you see them?" said Owl, a little surprised. "Come and look at them now." So they went outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice below it, and he looked at the bell rope and the notice below it. And the more he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt that he had seen something like it somewhere else, sometime before. "Handsome bell rope, isn't it?" said Owl. Pooh nodded. "It reminds me of something," he said, "but I can't think what. Where did you get it?" "I just came across it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush, and I thought at first somebody lived there, so I rang it, and nothing happened. And then I rang it again very loudly, and it came off in my hand. And as nobody seemed to want it, I took it home and... Owl, said Pooh solemnly, you made a mistake. Somebody did want it. Who? Eeyore, my dear friend Eeyore. He was fond of it. Fond of it? Attached to it, said Winnie the Pooh sadly. So with these words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore. And when Christopher Robin had nailed it on in its right place again, Eeyore frisked about the forest, waving his tail so happily that Winnie the Pooh came over all funny and had to hurry home for a little snack of something to sustain him. And, wiping his mouth half an hour afterwards, he sang to himself proudly. Who found the tail? I, said Pooh, at 2:45. Only it was 11:15, really. I found the tail. Look how happy Eeyore is. Chapter 5. Just gonna have some water. Chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a heffalump. One day, when Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh and Piglet were all talking together, Christopher Robin finished the mouthful he was eating and said carelessly, I saw a heffalump today, Piglet. What was it doing? Asked Piglet. Just lumping along, said Christopher Robin. I don't think it saw me. I saw one once, said Piglet. At least, I think I did, he said. Only perhaps it wasn't. So did I, said Pooh, wondering what a heffalump was like. You don't often see them, said Christopher Robin carelessly. Not now, said Piglet. Not at this time of the year, said Pooh. Then they all talked about something else until it was time for Pooh and Piglet to go home together. At first, as they stumped along the path which edged the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they came to the stream and had helped each other across the stepping stones and were able to walk side by side again over the heather, they began to talk in a friendly way about this and that. And Piglet said, If you see what I mean, Pooh. And Pooh said, It's just what I think myself, Piglet. And Piglet said, But on the other hand, Pooh, we must remember. And Pooh said, Quite true, Piglet, although I had forgotten it for the moment. And then, just as they came to the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked round to see that nobody else was listening and said in a very solemn voice, Piglet, I have decided something. What have you decided, Pooh? I have decided to catch a heffalump. Pooh nodded his head several times as he said this and waited for Piglet to say, How? Or, Pooh, you couldn't. Or something helpful of that sort, but Piglet said nothing. The fact was, Piglet was wishing that he had thought about it first. I shall do it, said Pooh, after waiting a little longer. by means of a trap. And it must be a cunning trap. So you will have to help me, Piglet. Pooh, said Piglet, feeling quite happy again now. I will. And then he said, how shall we do it? And Pooh said, that's just it. How? And they sat down together to think it out. Pooh's first idea was that they should dig a very deep pit, and then the heffalump would come along and fall into the pit, and why? Said Piglet. Why what? Said Pooh. Why would he fall in? Pooh rubbed his nose with his paw and said that the heffalump might be walking along, humming a little song and looking up at the sky, wondering if it would rain. And so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that this was a very good trap, but supposing it was raining already? Pooh rubbed his nose again and said that he hadn't thought of that. And then he brightened up and said that if it were raining already, the heffalump would be looking at the sky, wondering if it would clear up, and so he wouldn't see the very deep pit until he was halfway down, when it would be too late. Piglet said that now this point had been explained, he thought it was a cunning trap. Pooh was very proud when he heard this, and he felt that the heffalump was as good as caught already. But there was just one other thing which had to be thought about, and it was this. Where should they dig the very deep pit? Piglet said that the best place would be somewhere where a heffalump was, just before he fell into it, only about a foot further on. But then he would see us digging it, said Pooh. Not if he was looking at the sky. He would suspect, said Pooh, if he happened to look down. He thought for a long time and then added sadly, it isn't as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why heffalumps hardly ever get caught. That must be it, said Piglet. They sighed and got up, and when they had taken a few gorse prickles out of themselves, they sat down again, and all the time Pooh was saying to himself, if only I could think of something, for he felt sure that a very clever brain could catch a heffalump, if only he knew the right way to go about it. Suppose, he said to Piglet, you wanted to catch me. How would you do it? Well, said Piglet, I should do it like this. I should make a trap, and then I should put a jar of honey in the trap, and you would smell it, and you would go in after it, and I would go in after it, said Pooh excitedly, only very carefully so as not to hurt myself, and I would get to the jar of honey, and I should lick round the edges first of all, pretending there wasn't any more, you know. And then I should walk away and think about it a little. And then I should come back and start licking in the middle of the jar. And then, yes, well, never mind about that. There you would be, and there I should catch you. Now, the first thing to think of is, what do heffalumps like? I should think acorns, shouldn't you? We'll get a lot of... I say, wake up, Pooh. Pooh, who had gone into a happy dream, woke up with a start and said that honey was a much more trappy thing than acorns. Piglet didn't think so, And they were just going to argue about it when Piglet remembered that if they put acorns in the trap, he would have to find the acorns. But if they put honey, then Pooh would have to give up some of his own honey. So he said, "All right, honey then," just as Pooh remembered it too and was going to say, "All right, acorns." "Honey," said Piglet to himself in a thoughtful way, as if it were now settled. "I'll dig the pit while you go and get the honey." "Very well," said Pooh, and he stumped off. As soon as he got home, he went to the larder and he stood on a chair and took down a very large jar of honey from the top shelf. It had honey written on it, but just to make sure, he took off the paper cover and looked at it. And it looked just like honey. "But you never can tell," said Pooh. "I remember my uncle saying once that he had seen cheese just this colour." So he put his tongue in and took a large lick. "Yes," he said, "it is. No doubt about that. And honey, I should say, right down to the bottom of the jar. Unless, of course," he said, "somebody put cheese in the bottom just for a joke. Perhaps I should go just a little further, just in case heffalumps don't like cheese, same as me. And he gave a deep sigh. "I was right. It is honey, right the way down." Having made certain of this, he took the jar back to Piglet, and Piglet looked up from the bottom of his very deep pit and said, "Got it?" And Pooh said, "Yes, but it isn't quite a full jar." And he threw it down to Piglet, and Piglet said, "No, it isn't. Is that all you've got left?" And Pooh said, "Yes," because it was. So Piglet put the jar at the bottom of the pit and climbed out, and they went off home together. "Well, good night, Pooh," said Piglet when they had got to Pooh's house. "And we meet at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning by the pine trees and see how many heffalumps we've got in our trap." 6 o'clock, Piglet. "And have you got any string?" "No. Why do you want string?" "To lead them home with you." "Oh, I think heffalumps come if you whistle." "Some do and some don't. You never can tell with heffalumps. Well, good night." "Good night." And off Piglet trotted to his house, Trespassers W, while Pooh made his preparations for bed. Some hours later, just as the night was beginning to steal away, Pooh woke up suddenly with a sinking feeling. He had had that sinking feeling before, and he knew what it meant. He was hungry. So he went to the larder and he stood on a chair and reached up to the top shelf and found nothing. "That's funny," he thought. "I know I had a jar of honey there, a full jar, full of honey right up to the top, and it had honey written on it so that I should know it was honey. That's very funny." And then he began to wander up and down, wondering where it was and murmuring a murmur to himself like this: "It's very, very funny because I know I had some honey because it had a label on saying honey. A galoptious full up pot to and I don't know where it's got to. No, I don't know where it's gone. Well, that's funny. He had murmured this to himself 3 times in a singing sort of way, when suddenly he remembered. He had put it in the cunning trap to catch the heffalump. Bother, said Pooh. It all comes of trying to be kind to heffalumps. And he got back into bed. But he couldn't sleep. The more he tried to sleep, the more he couldn't. He tried counting sheep, which is sometimes a good way of getting to sleep. And as that was no good, he tried counting heffalumps. And that was worse, because every heffalump he counted was making straight for a pot of Pooh's honey and eating it all. For some minutes, he lay there miserably. But when the 587th heffalump was licking its jaws and saying to itself, very good honey this, I don't know when I've tasted better, Pooh could bear it no longer. He jumped out of bed, he ran out of the house, and he ran straight to the 6 pine trees. The sun was still in bed, but there was a lightness in the sky over the 100-acre wood, which seemed to show that it was waking up and would soon be kicking off the clothes. In the half-light, the pine trees looked cold and lonely, and the very deep pit seemed deeper than it was, and Pooh's jar of honey at the bottom was something mysterious, a shape and no more. But as he got nearer to it, his nose told him that it was indeed honey, and his tongue came out and began to polish up his mouth, ready for it. Bother, said Pooh, as he got his nose inside the jar. A heffalump has been eating it. And then he thought a little and said, oh, no, I did. I forgot. Indeed, he had eaten most of it, but there was a little left at the very bottom of the jar, and he pushed his head right in and began to lick. By and by, Piglet woke up. As soon as he woke, he said to himself, oh! Then he said bravely, yes! And then still more bravely, quite so. But he didn't feel very brave, for the word which was really jiggetting about in his brain was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Did it come when you whistled? And how did it come? Hey, welcome. Was it fond of pigs at all? If it was fond of pigs, did it make any difference what sort of pig? Supposing it was fierce with pigs, would it make any difference if the pig had a grandfather called Trespassers William? He didn't know the answer to any of these questions, and he was going to see his first heffalump in about an hour from now. Of course, Pooh would be with him. Okay. Of course, Pooh would be with him, and it was much more friendly with two. But suppose heffalumps were very fierce with pigs and bears? Wouldn't it be better to pretend he had a headache and couldn't go up to the 6 pine trees this morning? But then suppose that it was a very fine day and there was no heffalump in the trap. Here he would be, in bed all the morning, simply wasting his time for nothing. What should he do? And then he had a clever idea. He would go up very quietly to the 6 pine trees now, peep very cautiously into the trap and see if there was a heffalump there. And if there was, he would go back to bed. And if there wasn't, he wouldn't. So off he went. At first, he thought there wouldn't be a heffalump in the trap. And then he thought that there would. And as he got nearer, he was sure that there would because he could hear it, heffalumping about it like anything. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, said Piglet to himself. And he wanted to run away. But somehow, having got so near, he felt that he must just see what a heffalump was like. So he crept to the side of the trap and looked in. And all the time, Winnie the Pooh had been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he shook it, the more tightly it stuck. Bother, he said inside the jar, and oh, help, and mostly, ow. And he tried bumping it against things, but as he couldn't see what he was bumping it against, it didn't help him. And he tried to climb out of the trap, but as he could see nothing but jar and not much of that, he couldn't find his way. So at last he lifted up his head, jar and all, and made a loud roaring noise of sadness and despair. And it was at that moment that Piglet looked down. Help, help, cried Piglet. A heffalump, a horrible heffalump. And he scampered off as hard as he could, still crying out, help, help, a horrible heffalump, hoff, hoff, a horrible horrolump, hole, hole, a horrible hellerump. And he didn't stop crying and scampering until he got to Christopher Robin's house. Whatever's the matter, Piglet? Said Christopher Robin, who was just getting up. Huff, said Piglet, breathing so hard that he could hardly speak. A heffalump. Where? Up there, said Piglet, waving his paw. What did it look like? Like it had the biggest head you ever saw, Christopher Robin. A great, enormous thing, like nothing. A huge, big, well, like I don't know, like an enormous big nothing, like a jar. Well, said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, I shall go and look at it. Come on. Piglet wasn't afraid if he had Christopher Robin with him, so off they went. I can hear it, can't you? Said Piglet anxiously as they got near. I can hear something, said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh, bumping his head against a tree root he had found. There, said Piglet. Isn't it awful? And he held on tight to Christopher Robin's hand. Suddenly, Christopher Robin began to laugh, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And while he was still laughing, crash went the heffalomp's head against the tree root. Smash went the jar, and out came Pooh's head again. Then Piglet saw what a foolish piglet he had been, and he was so ashamed of himself that he ran straight off home and went to bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went home to breakfast together. Oh, Bear, said Christopher Robin, how I do love you. So do I, said Pooh. How are we doing? Chapter 6.
More.
Okay. Chapter 6 is a good one. It's in which Eeyore has a birthday and gets 2 presents. Eeyore, the old grey donkey, stood by the side of the stream and looked at himself in the water. Pathetic, he said. That's what it is. Pathetic. He turned and walked slowly down the stream for 20 yards, splashed across it, and walked slowly back on the other side. Then he looked at himself in the water again. As I thought, he said, no better from this side, but nobody minds, nobody cares. Pathetic, that's what it is. There was a crackling noise in the bracken behind him, and out came Pooh. Good morning, Eeyore, said Pooh. Good morning, Pooh Bear, said Eeyore gloomily. If it is a good morning, he said. Which I doubt, said he. Why? What's the matter? Nothing, Pooh Bear, nothing. We can't all, and some of us don't. That's all there is to it. Can't all what? Said Pooh, rubbing his nose. Gaiety, song and dance. Here we go round the mulberry bush. Oh, said Pooh. He thought for a long time and then asked, what mulberry bush is that? Bon homie, went on Eeyore gloomily. French word meaning bon homie, he explained. I'm not complaining, but there it is. Pooh sat down on a large stone and tried to think this out. It sounded to him like a riddle, and he was never much good at riddles, being a bear of very little brain. So he sang Cottleston Pie instead. Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie, a fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle and I reply, Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie. That was the first verse. When he had finished it, Eeyore didn't actually say that he didn't like it, so Pooh very kindly sang the second verse to him. Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie, a fish can't whistle and neither can I. Ask me a riddle and I reply, Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie. Eeyore still said nothing at all, so Pooh hummed the third verse very quietly to himself. Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie, why does a chicken? I don't know why. Ask me a riddle and I reply, Cottleston, Cottleston, Cottleston Pie. That's right, said Eeyore. Sing, umpty tiddly umpty too. Here we go gathering nuts and may. Enjoy yourself. I am, said Pooh. Some can, said Eeyore. Why? What's the matter? Is anything the matter? You seem so sad, Eeyore. Sad? Why should I be sad? It's my birthday, the happiest day of the year. Your birthday? said Pooh in great surprise. Of course it is. Can't you see? Look at all the presents I've had. He waved a foot from side to side. Look at the birthday cake, candles and pink sugar. Pooh looked, first to the right and then to the left. Presents, said Pooh. Birthday cake, said Pooh. Where? Can't you see them? No, said Pooh. Neither can I, said Eeyore. Joke, he explained. Ha ha. Pooh scratched his head, being a little puzzled by all this. But is it really your birthday? He asked. It is. Oh, well, many happy returns of the day, Eeyore. And many happy returns to you, Pooh Bear. But it isn't my birthday. No, it's mine. But you said many happy returns. Well, why not? You don't always want to be miserable on my birthday, do you? Oh, I see, said Pooh. It's bad enough, said Eeyore, almost breaking down. Being miserable myself, what with no presents and no cake and no candles and no proper notice taken of me at all. But if everybody else is going to be miserable too, this was too much for Pooh. Stay there, he called to Eeyore, as he turned and hurried back home as quick as he could, for he felt that he must get poor Eeyore a present of some sort at once, and he could always think of a proper one afterwards. Outside his house, he found Piglet, jumping up and down and trying to reach the knocker. Hello, Piglet, he said. Hello, Pooh, said Piglet. What are you trying to do? I was trying to reach the knocker, said Piglet. I just came round. Let me do it for you, said Pooh kindly. So he reached up and knocked at the door. I have just seen Eeyore, he began, and poor Eeyore is in a very sad condition because it's his birthday and nobody has taken any notice of it. And he's very gloomy, you know what Eeyore is. And there he was, and what a long time whoever lives here is answering this door. And he knocked again. But Pooh, said Piglet, it's your own house. Oh, said Pooh, so it is, he said. Well, let's go in. So in they went. The first thing Pooh did was go to the cupboard to see if he had quite a small jar of honey left, and he had, so he took it down. I'm giving this to Eeyore, he explained, as a present. What are you going to give? Couldn't I give it too? Said Piglet. From both of us? No, said Pooh. That would not be a good plan. All right then, I'll give him a balloon. I've got one left from my party. I'll go and get it now, shall I? That, Piglet, is a very good idea. It's just what Eeyore wants to cheer him up. Nobody can be uncheered with a balloon. So off Piglet trotted, and in the other direction went Pooh with his jar of honey. It was a warm day, and he had a long way to go. He hadn't gone more than halfway when a sort of funny feeling began to creep all over him. It began at the tip of his nose and trickled all through him and out at the soles of his feet. It was just as if somebody inside him was saying, "Now then, Pooh, time for a little something." "Dear, dear," said Pooh. "I didn't know it was as late as that." So he sat down and took the top off his jar of honey. "Lucky I brought this with me," he thought. "Many a bear going out on a warm day like this would never have thought of bringing a little something with him." And he began to eat. "Now, let me see," he thought, as he took his last lick of the inside of the jar. "Where was I going? Ah, yes, Eeyore." He got up slowly. And then suddenly he remembered he had eaten Eeyore's birthday present. "Bother," said Pooh. "What shall I do? I must give him something." For a little while, he couldn't think of anything. And then he thought, well, it's a very nice pot, even if there's no honey in it. And if I washed it clean and got somebody to write a happy birthday on it, Eeyore could keep something in it, which might be useful. So, as he was just passing the 100-acre wood, he went inside to call on Owl, who lived there. "Good morning, Owl," he said. "Good morning, Pooh," said Owl. "Many happy returns of Eeyore's birthday," said Pooh. "Oh, is that what it is? What are you giving him, Owl?" "What are you giving him, Pooh?" "I'm giving him a useful pot to keep things in, and I wanted to ask you." "Is this it?" said Owl, taking it out of Pooh's paw. "Yes, and I wanted to ask you." "Somebody has been keeping honey in it," said Owl. "You can keep anything in it," said Pooh earnestly. "It's very useful like that. And I wanted to ask you, you ought to write a happy birthday on it." "That was what I wanted to ask you," said Pooh, "because my spelling is wobbly. It's good spelling, but it wobbles and the letters get in the wrong place. Would you write a happy birthday on it for me?" "It's a nice pot," said Owl, looking at it all round. "Couldn't I give it too, from both of us?" "No," said Pooh. "That would not be a good plan. Now, I'll just wash it first, and then you can write on it." Well, he washed the pot out and dried it, while Owl licked the end of his pencil and wondered how to spell birthday. "Can you read, Pooh?" he asked a little anxiously. "There's a notice about knocking and ringing outside my door, which Christopher Robin wrote. Could you read it?" "Christopher Robin told me what it said, and then I could." "Well, I'll tell you what this says, and then you'll be able to." So Owl wrote, and this is what he wrote. "Hippy pappy bathuthduth, thathuthduth, bathuthdy." Pooh looked on admiringly. "I'm just saying a happy birthday," said Owl carelessly. "It's a nice long one," said Pooh, very much impressed by it. "Well, actually, of course, I'm saying a very happy birthday with love from Pooh." Naturally, it takes a great deal of pencil to say a long thing like that. Oh, I see, said Pooh. While all this was happening, Piglet had gone back to his own house to get Eeyore's balloon. He held it very tightly against himself so that it shouldn't blow away, and he ran as fast as he could so as to get to Eeyore before Pooh did, for he thought that he would like to be the first one to give a present, just as if he had thought of it without being told by anybody. And running along and thinking how pleased Eeyore would be, he didn't look where he was going. And suddenly he put his foot in a rabbit hole and fell down flat on his face. Bang! Piglet lay there, wondering what had happened. At first, he thought that the whole world had blown up. And then he thought that perhaps only the forest part of it had. And then he thought that perhaps only he had, and he was now alone in the moon or somewhere, and would never see Christopher Robin or Pooh or Eeyore again. And then he thought, well, even if I'm in the moon, I needn't be face downwards all the time. So he got cautiously up and looked about him. He was still in the forest. Well, that's funny, he thought. I wonder what that bang was. I couldn't have made such a noise just falling down. And where's my balloon? And what's that small piece of damp rag doing? It was the balloon. Oh dear, said Piglet. Oh dear, oh dearie, dearie, dear. Well, it's too late now. I can't go back, and I haven't another balloon, and perhaps Eeyore doesn't like balloons so very much. So he trotted on, rather sadly now, and down he came to the side of the stream where Eeyore was, and called out to him. Good morning, Eeyore, shouted Piglet. Good morning, little Piglet, said Eeyore. If it is a good morning, he said. Which I doubt, said he. Not that it matters, he said. Many happy returns of the day, said Piglet, having now got closer. Eeyore stopped looking at himself in the stream and turned to stare at Piglet. Just say that again, he said. Wait a moment. Balancing on 3 legs, he began to bring his 4th leg very cautiously up to his ear. I did this yesterday, he explained, as he fell down for the 3rd time. It's quite easy. It's so as I can hear better. There, that's done it. Now then, what were you saying? He pushed his ear forwards with his hoof. Many happy returns of the day, said Piglet again. Meaning me? Of course, Eeyore. My birthday? Yes. Me having a real birthday? Yes, Eeyore, and I've brought you a present. Eeyore took down his right hoof from his right ear, turned round, and with great difficulty put up his left hoof. I must have that in the other ear, he said. Now then. A present, said Piglet very loudly. Meaning me again? Yes. My birthday still? Of course, Eeyore. Me going on having a real birthday? Yes, Eeyore. And I brought you a balloon. Balloon, said Eeyore. You did say balloon. One of those big coloured things you blow up. Gaiety, song and dance. Here we are and there we are. Yes, but I'm very sorry, Eeyore, but when I was running along to bring it to you, I fell down. Dear, dear, how unlucky. You ran too fast, I expect. You didn't hurt yourself, little piglet. No, but oh, Eeyore, I burst the balloon. There was a very long silence. My balloon, said Eeyore at last. Piglet nodded. My birthday balloon? Yes, Eeyore, said Piglet, sniffing a little. Here it is, with many happy returns of the day. And he gave Eeyore the small piece of damp rag. Is this it? Said Eeyore, a little surprised. Piglet nodded. My present? Piglet nodded again. The balloon? Yes. Thank you, Piglet, said Eeyore. You don't mind me asking, he went on, but what colour was this balloon when it was a balloon? Red. I just wondered. Red, he murmured to himself. My favourite colour. How big was it? About as big as me. I just wondered. About as big as Piglet, he said to himself sadly. My favourite size. Well, well. Piglet felt very miserable and didn't know what to say. He was still opening his mouth to begin something and then deciding it wasn't any good saying that, when he heard a shout from the other side of the river, and there was Pooh. Many happy returns of the day, called out Pooh, forgetting that he had said it already. Thank you, Pooh. I'm having them, said Eeyore gloomily. I've brought you a little present, said Pooh excitedly. I've had it, said Eeyore. Pooh had now splashed across the stream to Eeyore, and Piglet was sitting a little way off, his head in his paws, snuffling to himself. It's a useful pot, said Pooh. Here it is, and it's got a very happy birthday with love from Pooh written on it. That's what all that writing is, and it's for putting things in. There. When Eeyore saw the pot, he became quite excited. Why, he said, I believe my balloon will just go into that pot. Oh no, Eeyore, said Pooh. Balloons are much too big to go into pots. What you do with a balloon is you hold the balloon. Not mine, said Eeyore proudly. Look, Piglet. And as Piglet looked sorrowfully around, Eeyore picked the balloon up with his teeth and placed it carefully in the pot, picked it out and put it on the ground, and then picked it up again and put it carefully back. So it does, said Pooh. It goes in. So it does, said Piglet, and it comes out. Doesn't it, said Eeyore. It goes in and out like anything. I'm very glad, said Pooh happily, that I thought of giving you a useful pot to put things in. I'm very glad, said Piglet happily, that I thought of giving you something to put in a useful pot. But Eeyore wasn't listening. He was taking the balloon out and putting it back again, as happy as could be. And didn't I give him anything? Asked Christopher Robin sadly. Of course you did, I said. You gave him, don't you remember, a little, I gave him a box of paint to paint things with. That was it. Why didn't I give it to him in the morning? You were so busy getting his party ready for him. He had a cake with icing on top and 3 candles and his name in pink sugar and... Yes, I remember, said Christopher Robin. How are we all doing?
Thank you, Bina.
Thank you.
That was so lovely.
Oh, that was so heartwarming.
I was just thinking, I can definitely relate to Eeyore as someone who A, spends a lot of time stressed, B, does not get super excited about his birthday, but C, does get very into elegant storage solutions.
Relatable, man, relatable. And also, just like for me, appreciates friends taking the time to try, even if it's last minute.
One of my favorite things about Winnie the Pooh is how everyone is Eeyore's friend, but also doesn't I don't know, they didn't complain about how he is or try to make him different or anything. It's just they just visit him and give him presents when they get reminded and stuff.
Going to see Mama.
Oh, I will try to. There we go. You can see me.
I really love that message that Michael that you put up about Aroha being really into Eeyore as a name. Just vowels.
Eeyore. Yeah, she was repeating.
Eeyore.
Eeyore?
She was repeating a lot of lines after Bina. Every third line she was repeating.
1 minute into the story, she repeated the title of the story, not with the presents part, but yeah. She said it's called whatever it is called, in which Eeyore has a birthday or something.
Yeah. In which Eeyore has a birthday and gets 2 presents.
Yeah. She doesn't remember the presents bit, but the other bit.
Milk. Milk.
I have milk and you can come and get it.
Kid.
The food. Very good. Got it.
And then I put to Mama.
Gonna bring your foot to Mama.
Very good.
I eat that.
I'm not hungry, love.
What are we looking at?
Lunch leftovers.
Black rice, broccoli.
Broccoli and black rice.
Nice.
Mama said.
Is it? She doesn't seem to be eating it though.
I mean, in all fairness, that is
Just
great. Food is pretty fun to play with.
Hand.
You've got some rice in your hand? Are you gonna eat it?
Yep.
That's a super healthy story time snack.
Hi, it's eating snack. It's eating snack.
Yeah, sometimes people have cocktails with Storytime snacks. Maybe one time we'll get your cocktail.
Hello, Malcolm.
Hi, Malcolm face.
Oh, Malcolm's here.
Malcolm's here. Every time I can't unhear it in my head whenever Malcolm arrives now.
Oh, we should say goodbye to the catch-up crew.
Oh yeah.
Catch-up crew. Catch-up crew.
Are we all doing a catch-up crew?
Catch-up crew.
Catch-up crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope on your
Where's Bracken?
birthday-
Where's our sage advice?
Wait, I've got one.
Venus got.
We hope on your birthday you
Mama.
also get 2 presents.
Oh,
Bye, catch-up crew.
Catch-up crew.
Mama, Mama, Mama.